Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing horror discussions, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of, well, you know, Texas.
Somewhere in Texas.
This is the second big-ass theory Texas Chainsaw Massacre episode that we've done in, I don't know, a couple months.
So you did, your last one was this summer.
Right. So a couple months ago, I did a big, I think it was 40 minutes. I did a big deep dive episode about all of the vampire subtext in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Was I even on that episode?
I don't think so.
I think it was just you.
And it was a whole big swirling argument and thesis. It's fun. Go check it out. This is another one of those. So we rewatched Chainsaw in theater. It was fantastic. It was there was a Q&A. Kim Henkel was there. The composer was there. The actress who played Pam was there. It was fascinating.
It was really fun. It was an anniversary screening. It was a lot of fans. There was a lot of love in that room. It was good.
This is now the third episode we've done on this movie, which makes it the grindstone of the show. We've never covered something 3 times before.
Yeah, because we keep going back to the house over and over again.
Yes, we've also made many pilgrimages to the house.
Fun.
We've had brunch in the house
in the dining room
where the dinner scene takes place.
So fun.
So this is a fascinating film. I think endlessly fascinating, and I'm enjoying this ongoing relationship that we've built with it, where we have these new ideas, still seeking to understand this 83-minute magic trick of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think I found a new angle on the film that I want to explore here on the show. So there's a germ of the idea, and then we're going to work through it, and then I have a revised final thesis to get to. The germ of the idea, and this hit me like a truck about 15 minutes into the film, is that Franklin is Leatherface.
Oh, okay.
Or at least, more literally, that he sort of summons or conjures Leatherface into the narrative.
Okay.
And that Leatherface then acts as almost his agent, his cleaner, his revenge, his subconscious brought to life. So this occurred to me in the moment where the initial couple that dies, they are
Pam and the other one. Yeah.
Yes, the guy with the glasses.
Yeah.
The way
he looks like Hyde from that 70s show.
The way they use and abuse Franklin, and they're completely cutting him out and ignoring him on this trip.
Yep.
And then they ask him about this path to go swimming, and they're just completely discarding that he's obviously upset. They're not addressing that at all.
Right.
They just use and abuse him, they get the information, and then they leave. And that's where I started to get the germ of this idea, because after spurning Franklin, they go off, follow the path that he told them about, and then they're mercilessly killed. Mm-hmm. And we're looking forward to them dying because the movie's called a massacre.
That's
and
what the movie is.
We want to see Leatherface. But if you zoom out and just look on paper, how much we know about this drama and how much we know about these characters, they're kind of killed without context or motive.
Sure, yeah.
They're just killed.
That's what's scary. It's like a random guy who just all of a sudden kills them
in this horrible
opens way.
And a guy kills him with a mallet. But there's not like a reason. Yes, they're in his house, but we don't even know how much he understands that.
Sure.
There's less of a motive from Leatherface. Meanwhile, there's this lingering Franklin motive that kind of started to fill in the blanks for me. Because if you ascribe the Franklin motive and grievances against all of these other teenager characters, it almost starts to motivate what Leatherface is doing. So that's the germ of the idea.
Okay.
And I want to zoom in on that a little more because the treatment of Franklin in this film, during the Q&A, they were talking about Franklin being like one of the most annoying characters in horror.
And it's true, he is.
It is, but if you look at it through a more sympathetic lens, if you apply more of a human view of him,
of course,
he is constantly mocked, ignored, passed over, openly insulted, sidelined, forgotten, and slighted. And all of those resentments that I think fairly bubble up within him, they start to bubble over in really telling ways throughout the film. So there are 4 ways here that we're then going to talk about again. So I'm going to lay them out, and then I'm going to set them up and then knock them down.
Cool.
So
I'm excited.
I can't tell you excited.
I'm just here for the ride, by the way. Listener, if you couldn't tell, I did not develop any. I'm just here to listen and respond. I'm very excited.
So number 1 is the way he mocks his friends' voices. When he does when they're upstairs laughing and screaming.
It's truly very funny.
It's great.
Very
it's
good.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie. So he's mocking the voices of his friends, and then as he's wheeling himself into the house, he starts blowing raspberries. The second moment of resentment that bubbles over is all of his conversation topics being spurned and mocked in the van. that's where we start to see him get frustrated. Takes out the knife, and the way he starts like attacking his fingernails. He's hurt.
Yeah.
He's very wronged by these people. They're just like openly disdainful of him. They treat him like a burden. The third moment of resentment that bubbles over is when he has to chase after them with his wheelchair. No one will give him any help, even over this awful unpaved terrain.
Yeah, not at all ADA accessible. Like it's just grass and dirt and all these different levels and trying to get up into the house over the threshold. Yeah, he's clearly struggling. Yeah.
And that's what motivates some of these, or he sort of vents his frustrations. But that's a really telling visual of the way they're abandoning, using, and abusing him. And then the fourth way is just the general fact that this is his family house that they're using while leaving him out.
That's true.
So
like it's Sally's too, but yeah, that's
but it's
pretty...
just as much his.
Right, yeah.
And they're treating him with such disdain and disrespect while using his family house for the weekend to go like bang upstairs while they leave him in the entryway.
You clearly get the sense that they just brought Franklin along because they had to, because he's Sally's brother and I guess he doesn't want to be by himself. I don't know. But they see him as such a burden. It's very sad.
And they treat him like that too, which is much worse.
Yeah, I mean, even Sally does. And she's like, I guess the nicest to him or helps him the most. But even still, you can tell she resents it the whole time.
So here's the weird part.
Okay.
Those 4 moments of resentment bubbling over, they all resurface really pointedly in members of the Sawyer family.
Oh, okay. The crazy family, the Chainsaw
Yes.
family. Okay.
So the first
Do
one,
tell.
blowing raspberries in the house.
I definitely noticed that
It's just like the hitchhiker blowing raspberries at the van when they kick him out in the same way they metaphorically kick out Franklin. The way they pointedly exclude Franklin. I mean, it's basically as literal, the way they exclude Franklin as literally kicking someone out of a van.
Yes, perfect.
It's a perfect mapping on the way they treat Franklin. And then the mocking impression of his friends when he does the
yeah.
The hitchhiker does that to Sally during the dinner.
Oh, he does?
When she's like begging them to let her go, and he does, remember he's holding like his hands up to his eyes, like mocking, crying.
Yeah.
He mocks her through that entire scene.
Oof. Okay, yeah.
So that's a weird resurfacing.
That is weird.
Of Franklin's particular resentments against these people. The second one, where I was talking about the conversations being spurned and mocked in the van, where they're telling him like, no one wants to talk about head cheese and mallets and bolt guns
Franklin,
right now.
Shut up. Yeah.
The sausage conversation in the van is magically the hitchhiker's expertise. And in retrospect, even though he does attack him with a knife, that is the fullest, kindest conversation Franklin has with anyone in the film.
Sure, okay.
And the second they kick out the hitchhiker, almost like this avatar, they start treating Franklin like dirt again.
Yeah.
And some of this even extends to the father, the guy with the teeth in the gas station.
Yeah. Ugh.
His expertise is sausage. We learn later that he's just the cook. And the way the father, again, this kind of cruelty without motive, the way the father interacts with the teenagers is so nasty and unprovoked that I think you can fill in the blanks with Franklin's resentments. The way he's cruel to Sally, obviously kidnapping her, but the extra level of petty cruelty, which I think is more telling from a character perspective, the way he pokes her with the stick in the car, the way when they're at the gas station and there's that guy dragging the bucket back and forth, like washing the car while the guy is talking to the 2 boys in the van. He has such a total contempt for these young guys with their, bouncy full heads of hair and their pretty girlfriends and their glasses and, their happier life that's outside of this kind of hovel.
Yeah.
I think his total contempt for the guys is a really interesting inversion of Franklin's total deference to them and hero worship of them. Do you remember after the hitchhiker incident where he tries to rationalize what happened and he's being really nice to Sally and he's saying, the guy was probably scared Jerry was going to kill him.
Oh, yeah.
He's being nice to his sister about her boyfriend.
I see. Yeah.
And you can see the way he defers to, the way he beats himself down in comparison to these guys. There's an interesting kind of bitter inversion of that in the total seething contempt that the father and the hitchhiker have for those guys.
That's cool. I like that.
It's these bubbling over resentments. It's this other side of the coin. The third element that I wanted to play with, which is him having to chase after them in the wheelchair and not getting any help. the way Leatherface chases Sally through the woods feels like a perfect inversion of that helplessness.
Yeah.
And this is the one that's the most fun to talk about because it happens right after Franklin's breaking point. We have to talk about Sally here because earlier you said she was the nicest to Franklin. I think she's by far the meanest to him.
Oh, okay. Tell me why.
Sally's great, and she's mean to him throughout the film, but her greatest cruelty to Franklin in this film is her attempting to abandon him in the dark when they're both scared to go look for Jerry.
Yes.
When she tries to take the flashlight, when she tries to leave him behind, when she won't push the wheelchair. It's the nastiest anyone is to him throughout the film. She's screaming at him, treating him like some horrible dead weight burden when he's literally just trying to help.
That's true.
He's trying to plan. He's trying to go find her stupid boyfriend. He's trying to plan to save them. He was helping everyone get to the swimming path. He's played along this entire time, and she is treating him worse and worse and worse. And this is where the theory felt like it had legs to me, where the rubber kind of starts to hit the road, is in Franklin's relationship with Sally. Because just before Leatherface chases Sally off for a good long while, what does he do in the woods? He kills Franklin.
Sure, yeah.
And this should explode my theory. This should make no sense. How can Leatherface be Franklin if Leatherface kills Franklin? How can he be this conjured reflection of him if he kills Franklin? The moment that Leatherface kills Franklin is the very moment where Franklin is at his most insulted and excluded and aggrieved. When the person that should be the kindest and most supportive and in his corner, Sally, is the most cruel and exclusionary to him. We get this crossover moment of Franklin and his subconscious, Leatherface, I'm arguing.
Okay.
And in this moment of maximum metaphor, Franklin's self-loathing, which we also kind of read between the lines, the way he compares himself to the other boys, his mobility challenges, there's a frustration there that to me reads as self-loathing in certain moments.
Yeah.
That self-loathing erupts into an almost surreal level of self-harm when Leatherface kills Franklin.
Okay.
I think it's the moment of, if Leatherface is his alter ego and an avatar of his boiling resentments of these people, it's the moment where those resentments take over and run wild. So here I'm trying to reframe Franklin's death as almost a handoff Jekyll and Hyde moment, a coup of his identity where the dark side takes over.
I like that. Well, it's also like, it's interesting because in that moment, Leatherface could easily have killed Sally as well because she's pushing Franklin's wheelchair. Like, it's always a bit of a like, oh, really? She gets away in that moment, as like the plot has to keep going. But I think you could read that in two ways. One, it's either his self-loathing is so much stronger than his resentment of the people around him, like Sally, that he prioritizes, killing his own self there, like, well, I'm the problem, I'm the reason people treat me like this, so like if I'm gone, then that solves it, so you could read it as that way. Or you could read it a little bit more of a sinister way. Leatherface kills Franklin to get him out of the way, but then chases Sally into the house so that they can do the whole dinner scene with Sally. Their goal with Sally wasn't just to kill her. Their goal was to torture her and have this whole song and dance ritual with the family. So maybe that's like Franklin's subconscious wanting to punish Sally even more than he has punished everybody else.
Yes, that's perfect. There's an extra level of malice towards Sally because they don't play with their food with any of the other teams.
Right, they go straight for the kill, yeah.
I mean, they with the hammer, the second guy who dies, it's like one stroke and he's dead.
Yeah,
there's
boom.
no
That's
story there.
Yep.
And they make a meal out of trying to kill Sally. There's this pent-up malice. And again, that lack of motive on the Sawyer family's part becomes filled in by the excess of motive on Franklin's part. And I think, honestly, that marathon chase scene through the woods, which lasts longer than you think, if anything, that exaggerates Franklin's mobility challenges.
Yeah.
Because Leatherface is sprinting for minutes on end, where we've just seen Franklin have to struggle to move 10 feet through this horrible, like, unkempt wilderness.
Right.
There's such a bitterness in the counterpoint of Leatherface and Franklin.
Sure. And even when, like, thinking about his mobility issues, like the moment where Franklin's trying to get into the old house, like not the Leatherface house, but his family house, we see him struggle in that doorway for like 2 minutes, and it's like really painful to watch, and it looks really difficult, and he is like not having a good time. contrast that with Leatherface's ability to just chop down the door of his house with his chainsaw, his family home, and just like, instead of like struggle to get through the door, just, slice through it with this machine and get right through. Like that contrast is really striking.
It's almost a wish fulfillment. It's this person you want to be, but also the worst possible side.
Yeah,
of
it's
yourself.
a vengeful wish fulfillment.
That's why I'm calling this on YouTube. I'm saying Leatherface is Franklin's revenge.
Okay, cool.
But here's a moment that really ties these characters together, and I think strengthens this theory. I noticed this in one like fleeting, glimpsing shot a little bit later in the movie, when we see Leatherface back in the house after he's chased Sally and they're settling in for dinner. We see Franklin's wheelchair in the house.
Oh, we do?
Leatherface brought the wheelchair back into the house and neatly folded it up in the corner.
I didn't see that.
It's in the room where the meat hook is.
Okay.
He folded up almost respectfully, almost like it was his own.
Weird.
Almost lovingly, like he knows how to use it. He folded it up and put it in the house.
So he like went back into the woods, wheeled Franklin's body back into the house, I guess, to like, save for food, and then kept the wheelchair.
There's a subtext there. There's a connection there.
That's
and
interesting.
This fourth moment, and I think this kind of brings it home. This is the last one.
Yeah.
Where initially I was saying this resentment of it's Franklin's fucking house that they're using and abusing while leaving him out. And I think you just previewed this a minute ago in your thoughts. Franklin's family house is being used and abused while he's left out. We restage this in the sort of mirror image of the Sawyer family. We restage this as Franklin's friends. What they do when they go off on their own and one by one they're killed off by Leatherface. What they're doing, technically, is individually invading the Sawyer house.
Yeah, they're all like basically breaking in. I mean, the door's open.
In the same way, they're all invading Franklin's house and then being killed for it.
Interesting.
But like you said, these two mirror images, they don't touch. Franklin and Leatherface, they only touch in the one handoff moment where they Jekyll and Hyde kill each other. Franklin never enters the Sawyer house.
At least we don't see it. It seems like his body may have been brought in via his wheelchair, but we don't see it happen.
Compared to the rest of them. Right.
Yeah, right.
So Franklin is almost treated like just a figurehead. He's just he's used for the house. They carry him along and they kind of leave him in the car. He's just there on a shelf. He's not really a living thing to them. He's just a guy that they use for the keys to the house and then they kind of leave him in the attic.
Yes.
Just like Grandpa.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Grandpa, a figurehead who they keep on a shelf in the attic, who's barely alive, who they every time the Sawyer family talks about Grandpa, they keep mentioning and explicitly saying that the house is his.
He also can't walk, by the way.
Grandpa can't walk. Grandpa is functionally dead. He's kept isolated in the attic next to, and this is another kind of pointed element of the subconscious, he's right there next to a skeleton of presumably his wife, which foregrounds the fact that is enumerated multiple times through the film that Franklin is the only one of these teens without a partner. He's the only one alone in that way too. So here in this inversion, we see kind of the reverse of that, where we have this wife there.
Interesting.
But yes, I'm glad you spotlight that, because Grandpa has to be carried and cannot seem to walk on his own, which is such a cruel echo of Franklin having to use a wheelchair. And this is where we pull everything together. Because Grandpa, even with the whole family trying to help him, Grandpa explicitly fails to kill Sally with the hammer. Can't swing it properly, can't aim it properly.
Yes.
He gets to try, he gets 50, bites at the apple, doesn't work.
Yeah.
Grandpa fails to kill Sally, just like Leatherface does in their marathon chase scene.
It's true. He never quite gets to her, yeah.
And if you've seen the end of the movie, they all ultimately fail to kill Sally. Just like Franklin fails to ever win her respect or love. She is the linchpin for him. She is the original sin betrayal. My sister doesn't even have my back. Yes, her friends treat me like shit and use and abuse me, but even my sister doesn't have my back. So she is this inconquerable final boss for Franklin. And his mirror images, the Sawyer family, they can't take her down either. They have the same limitations. Even through all of these wish fulfillment reversals, they have the same limitations. And so if I go back to the original germ of this idea and revise it to be sort of a final thesis, now I can argue that the entire Sawyer family are fractal projections of Franklin's tortured subconscious.
That's fabulous. I love that. I'm going to add to it because when you were talking about the cook and the dad earlier and the barbecue, remember after they go to the gas station and they're out in front of the house, Franklin's got this nasty looking sausage in his mouth. It looks like a finger. It's the grossest thing you've ever seen. Every time I watch it, I'm like, what the fuck is that? It's so gross. But like they clearly they bought some barbecue from the gas station. Like they bought some food, some meat from there and, to have in the car. We don't ever see any of the other characters eat anything from the gas station as far as I can remember. But we do see Franklin not only eat it, but have it like in his mouth obscenely for a long time. And it's really gross. So he's like the only one who is partaking in the family's, what do you call it? Export, right? Like the thing that they make, which we sort of learn and it's hinted at that it's humans. And so he's the only one partaking in the cannibalism compared to everybody else in the group. So he's much more connected to the Sawyer family in that way as well. I think you could even argue that maybe him eating the meat is like part of some initiation into the family. Maybe that's where the turn kind of starts, is when they get to the house, the family house, I mean. So I think this is totally tracks. I think this is a really interesting idea.
Even Sally doesn't eat during the dinner scene.
That's true. Of course not. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I like that, especially because it's like it's all the friends. That is fun.
Yeah, I was incredibly excited to share this with you.
What do you make of at the end? Because Sally's able to get away because she's faster and she jumps on a truck. Leatherface is out there swinging his chainsaw around. I'm always intrigued by that image because I don't ever quite know what to make of it. Like, I'm not sure what it means. Like, he's obviously frustrated and disappointed that he missed his opportunity to get this thing and do this thing for his family. Get this thing, Sally, a woman, a person, to do this, to accomplish this task, right? But why is he swinging it around like that? I mean, part of it is just like the simplest answer is he's crazy, and it just like is a hint to his madness. But I think it's more than that. What do you make of it?
It's him reverting back to the mean. It's the thing that initiated this. If we are talking about this as a summoning or a conjuration of him bringing these seething resentments to life, his subconscious bubbling over and manifesting in these villains, even once Sally escapes, even once everyone else is dead, he's still left with all of those resentments, all of that flailing pain. So when we hear this mechanical screaming of the chainsaw while he's literally flailing, I think that's just showing like the poison that has leached into his soul here of all of this pain over time compounding. That's all that's left at the end.
Okay, I like that. I think that's great. That's perfect. Now, this is a really cool idea. I've never heard this before. I find it really fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Also, just like the builds of these two guys are really similar. Like Leatherface is bigger, but they're both kind of like broad shouldered, like bigger guys with like the curly hair. Like the Leatherface and Franklin physicality is similar too.
I blended their faces for the thumbnail, the infographic here on the podcast or on YouTube, and it wasn't as hard as it should have been.
No, when you first,
you're right. The build is similar.
When you first showed it to me, I thought it was a rare scene picture of the Leatherface actor without his leather face on. I thought it was him, and then I realized it was Franklin. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So this is fascinating. I love it.
Excellent. We have an episode about the movie from, I think, one of the first times we watched it. And actually, it was definitely a rewatch because we filmed the intro of that episode on location at the house.
It was fun.
We also did an episode about the 2022 sequel, remake, spinoff thing.
Which we enjoyed, I think, more than most people did.
Yes. And of course, we've done the vampire subtext episode from earlier this year. We have plenty of other theory episodes, plenty of other horror discussions. The arc of this show is the arc of our horror obsession. So there's plenty to go check out there. And over on Patreon, there's even more. We have our roundup series, The Breakfast Buffet, which lately has had 3 works of art that we compare and contrast, more difficult discussions. We've done plenty of horror there. We did a big female body horror episode. We also did 2 episodes about horror movies that didn't work for us, but had incredibly intriguing, difficult, experimental ideas. And I loved parsing those over there. So
that's fun.
Go support the show, $2 a month. You can check all that out, burn through that whole back catalog. And again, thank you very much for listening. And we'll be back here on Friday with another brand new episode.